Great, we're making really excellent progress here. We've looked at positioning, we've looked at margins, we've looked at divs, we've looked at styling text. We've done a lot of things with CSS. Now, you're about 2/3 of the way through the instructional part of the CSS chapter of this course, so congratulations for getting this far. I hope you're following along and it's all making sense. If you do have any questions to ask, please post them in the forum. The link's at the end of every video, or you can get there directly from the course website as well. So, we're moving on now to look at something called padding. This is very similar to margins, which is why we're looking at it here. So let me just get rid of the margin that we set at the end of the last video and move everything back to how it was before. So quite a common thing to want to do is to not have the actual contents of your divs right up against the edge. So it might be that you want a nice bit of space to actually give a nice gap to what's in the content of the div. So let's see how that might work. We don't need our Z index anymore either because we haven't got anything overlapping. Let's keep things nice and tidy. So very similar to margins, all we do, we use the padding instruction and we say, let's give it a padding of 10 pixels. There we go. So we've now got padding all the way around this text here. Now notice that we've got more padding at the top than we have in the on the left. So it looks like this is uneven. We'd expect to have 10 pixels of padding all the way around, but it doesn't look like that. Now why is that? This is because the P tag actually has some padding built in. So let's just have a look at that. If I get rid of that P tag there, and we'll just have the text, and then I refresh. Okay, that makes a little bit more sense. We've lost the formatting because we don't have that class anymore, but we have now just 10 pixels to the left and 10 pixels at the top. But that was a little bit, I cheated a little bit there by taking away the P tag. So how do we get that same effect with the P tag still in there? So let's get back to that. We've still got this big margin at the top. Well, what we're going to need to do is set the margins and the paddings for the P tag to be 0, and then you can control what margins and paddings you want from the div itself. So let's just see how that works. We'll start by setting the padding to 0 all around. We don't need a pixels instruction when you have a padding of 0 because it's 0 whatever it is. You can put 0px, but it's unnecessary. You can just have padding is 0. So let's see how that changes things. It doesn't actually make any difference at all. So what we really want to do is change the margins of the P tag to 0. Fantastic. So that's now achieved what we've got. So the P tag has some default margins around it, which actually have the effect of moving everything down. Now this is, it's not a bad thing. If we do another P tag now, we'll just put some text in there and see how it looks. Save and refresh. That's actually fine, isn't it? It looks good. So, but the reason the P tag is there is the margin is there on the P tag is because we want to have a nice bit of space in between the different paragraphs. So there's a bit of margin at the top of the paragraph by default. So you can take that away, but you might find that then your paragraphs are a little bit close together. That's a decision that you'll need to make when you're designing your websites. But for now, we'll set everything to 0 so that we have a bit more control over what goes on. So back up to our padding instruction here. The padding is 10 pixels, and that's 10 pixels all the way around. So you won't be surprised to hear that you can do exactly the same as what we did for margins and look at setting the padding settings differently for the top, bottom, left, right, etc. So if I change the padding to 10 pixels, 100 pixels, so what actually happens if we only set 2 of the padding instructions? Well, what actually happens is it will repeat those 2 instructions. So the top padding will be 10 pixels up here, the right padding will be 10 pixels, sorry, will be 100 pixels, and the bottom padding will be 10 pixels, and the left padding will be 100. So if you just set 2 of them, then it will automatically repeat those 2. Let's see how that looks. Okay, so we now have 10 pixels at the top and 10 pixels at the bottom. The bottom padding actually doesn't make any difference because our text doesn't go all the way down there anyway. And the left and right padding are both 100 pixels. Now, something to notice there, if I take away that 100 pixels, you'll notice that the div itself actually gets smaller. So this is something that can actually cause a lot of trouble when you're trying to design a website, but it's definitely something worth keeping in mind, that when you add padding to a div or any element, you're actually adding to the width and height of that element. So this padding instruction of 10 pixels means that we've got 10 pixels on the top, 10 pixels on the bottom, and on the left and right. That means that the width and height of this div is actually now 220 pixels, not 200 pixels. Even though we've got a statement there that the height is 200 pixels, that's 200 pixels without the padding. So it's important to remember that if you're trying to get things to line up and they have different levels of padding, you're going to need different widths and heights to have effectively them looking the same. So that can cause problems, but as long as you know how it works, you can deal with it. So finally, we've got the same ability that we had with the margins to add a specific padding to just one side. So we can say padding left is 100 pixels. See how that looks? So we've now lost the padding at the top, and we've just got 100 pixels worth of padding at the top. Oh, that was not entirely true. Sorry, you'll notice we've got a little bit of padding at the top. So that's the default div padding. So that's how you add padding to your divs to space everything out nicely and give everything a lot of room.